this video, I will detail the process by which I create compost for my garden in 3 weeks. Before we get started, let us talk a little bit about the benefits of composting and feeding compost to your garden. In gardening, you can pay lots of money for fertilizers, soil conditioners, etc. However, the best source of fertility for your soil is a good amount of organic matter and an active symbiotic ecosystem living in your soil. The agro industry has convinced us that we need to use lots of fertilizers to grow our own food to our own detriment. When you use lots of inorganic fertilizers, they leave behind inorganic salts that hinder the biomass in your soil. Instead, we must shift that paradigm. Instead of feeding your plants, you should think about feeding your microorganisms in your soil. Once you do that, your plants will take care of themselves. Now let us move to the materials we can use to create compost. In general terms, you need sources of nitrogen and carbon to start the process. Good sources of nitrogen include grass clippings, green leaves, coffee grounds, any green waste from your kitchen or garden, etc. Good sources of carbon include dried leaves, sawdust, cardboard, wood chips, dried grass clippings, etc. You may have heard that we always strive for a 30-to-1 ratio of carbon to nitrogen. However, people do not specify whether this is weight to weight, volume to volume ratio. Does water weight factor into the calculation? For these reasons, we do not stress over the 30-to-1 ratio. It is not rocket science. If you get too much nitrogen in your pile, your compost will go anaerobic and get stinky. That's bad, but it's not the end of the world. If you put too little nitrogen, it will not heat up enough and the process of composting will be slower. This only means that instead of finishing your compost in 3 weeks, it may take 4 or 5, maybe 2 months. However, with the method I will describe, you turn your compost very often, thereby adding air to your pile frequently, so the risk of the pile going anaerobic is much lower. That does not mean it cannot happen, but if it happens, again, it is not the end of the world. I try to do equal parts of brown and green material, and my pile has gone anaerobic only twice. So, it is not that big of a deal. Now, let us talk about the materials I use. I create this compost from horse manure, leaves, kitchen and garden scraps. Sometimes I do add some grass clippings as well, but mostly those are the materials I use. Horse manure. Very kind people at an equestrian school nearby stack their manure and allow me to pick it up for free. I appreciate them greatly for this. Craigslist is a great source to find people who offer manure for free. Some people use wood shavings as bedding for the stalls and collect it with the manure. Wood shavings have a very high content of carbon and almost no nitrogen. This would make your composting time longer, and this may be better for a colder compost scenario. I currently collect the manure only. Leaves. My neighbors kindly rake their yards and collect their leaves in bags that they later put out for collection. I just make sure to go by earlier than the city truck. Sometimes you get nice bags of only leaves. Sometimes they have other yard waste. If a bag is too quote-unquote dirty, I just put it out and it gets collected next week. Know that this resource is available in this fall and spring, so save some bags for the summer. I have plenty of bags as you can see from the videos. I layer brown and green in alternating layers. After each layer, I add a good amount of water. You do not want to overdo the water, as water displaces air and your pile may go anaerobic. However, you do want to add water between layers as bacteria use water to decompose the organic matter in your pile. At some point, I need to add half pallet in front of my compost bay to keep things from tumbling down. Once I turn the compost, I no longer need that extra pallet because I just pile it in a conical way. How often do I turn it? I create the pile on Sunday afternoon. I let the pile rest until Wednesday, so about 3 days for the first turn. Then I turn it every other day, until I turn it 9 times. This means I finish the last turn on Friday, almost 3 weeks from the start day. Saturday I spread the compost, and Sunday, guess what? I go pick more manure and start a new pile. The intention of turning your compost is to break up clumps and get the outside material to the inside. The longer you can keep things in the inside, the more is bacteria are going to die. You also want to keep aerating the pile, so you want to use a pitchfork and try to break up any clumps that you find. I turn my compost at 6 a.m. in the morning. It is a small workout, just about 20 minutes. It's invigorating and you can see all the steam coming out of your pile. To me, this signals to the activity that nature is doing for you, and it's a reminder of the renewal process that life is. You're taking refuse materials from other people and creating nurturing material that will feed your soil and create life in your garden. It is a labor intensive approach. Some other people advocate for lazy composting. I have a lazy compost pile myself. This is a way of composting where you add materials to a bin and let it sit for about 4 to 6 months once you fill the entire bay. I just felt that I could never produce enough compost for my garden in this way. My plants started to suffer. I needed to start turning compost faster or pay for already made compost. Paying for compost did not sound like a good idea to me. So here we are. In the next video, I'll show you how you can use the compost you create to make no-dig beds. I make those for free as well, so stay tuned. Until then, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Jose here. Happy gardening.